everybody. Welcome back to part two. I'm really sorry this had to be two parts. I watched part one and decided I really like how it came out, and it probably wasn't likely I would be able to make it shorter the second time around if I tried to make it all one single video. So we're keeping it that way. Here's part two. I've only got 7 discs left, so let's just plow right through it and get this done. Last disc I talked about was the Getaway. I said everything I need to say about that in part one. If you missed it, go check it out. This is the Legacy Discs Mongoose. This is the second most understable disc in my bag. The most understable being the Sting, which I also talked about in part one. This disc is my go-to disc for rollers. So I don't throw very many rollers, but I'm trying to incorporate it into my game. This is also a disc that I will be throwing on those high Anheuser shots that I need to get over or around obstacles that are a bit out of reach of my forehand. So at the current point in time, I'm not throwing this disc a ton because neither of those types of shots are shots that I try to throw very often. But especially in the case of the roller, I'm trying to work it into my game a lot more, and this is the disc that is going to get my roller game up to where I want it to be. So looking forward to throwing the Legacy Mongoose much more in the future. And my last fairway driver is one of the newest discs to my bag. This is the Lots, which is manufactured by Kastaplast. And this is in their K1 plastic. This disc, while only a 9-speed fairway driver, is the furthest flying disc in my bag. Even though it's a 9-speed, it is super glidey. Glides for days. Very similar to the FD in that sense, which I also talked about in part one. But this is a disc that I'm throwing about 80% of the time. I'm throwing this backhand. I'm throwing it hard and flat, letting it turn, hold that turn for quite a ways, and fight out of it back to center, or maybe even a little bit to the left for distances between 340 and 360 feet, which makes this the furthest flying disc in my bag. Absolutely love this disc. Love the K1 plastic. People who like Kastaplast discs often rave about this K1 plastic, and it is the real deal. It very much reminds me of 400G plastic from Prodigy, and one of my favorite plastics. Just awesome disc. If you're looking for a straight, stable, long-distance bomber of a disc, try out the Kastaplast Lots. Next, I have this H2V2. It is the Kevin Jones Signature Series in the 750 plastic, manufactured by Prodigy Discs. This is a disc that I actually bought off my brother. He got this in a player pack and decided he was never going to throw it because in the wooded courses of Georgia, he was afraid he would lose this disc very quickly, just because of the color. And so I was looking for a disc, a forehand disc, that would cover some of the higher distances for me. And so I bought this off him, and it was exactly the disc I was looking for quite a while, which was a forehand disc of distances of about 300 feet. Now I've actually beat this in a pretty good amount, and it's turning a lot more in flight, which means it's actually covering even more distance, which left this gap in forehand distances for me between 275 feet and like 320 feet that were... It was a big range that I didn't have a lot of confidence in hitting on the forehand, which is why I got the Getaway, which you saw in part one. And that disc is filling that role excellently. Even though this disc is beating in a little bit, I still throw this backhand more often than I do forehand now. I will throw it forehand if I need a full flight, full S flight. But on the backhand, this disc is pretty straight for me. I don't really turn it over, and it's good for distances of up to maybe 315 feet. So Still in my bag, even though it doesn't do what it used to do for me. Still fills a slot in my bag. Next up, my favorite disc in the bag for another reason. The Atom is still my favorite disc in my bag, but come on, guys. How can you not love the Pickle Rick stamped D1? This is manufactured by Prodigy in their 400G plastic, and it's got Pickle Rick front and center. This disc has quite the story behind it. So I was at Red Mountain South Course in Phoenix, and I found a disc that belonged to somebody else, and they wrote their name and phone number on the inside of the disc. So I texted him. His name is John Aday. It was a Champion Orc, and he was super excited that I found it. He said, if you ship it back to me, ship me one of your discs as well, and I will do a custom stamp job for free. And so John put this Pickle Rick stamp on my D1, and I absolutely love how it came out. Super, super cool disc. In addition, he also sent me this Legend of Zelda Hyrule Mini as kind of a surprise. I didn't know he was going to do that for me. So shout out to John. He does awesome work. And I actually just got this disc back in the mail yesterday, which is why I put off filming my in the bag, because I didn't want to film it without this disc. And so now it's finally back, and I am very excited to give Pickle Rick his inaugural flight out in the field. So very excited to toss Pickle Rick around. All right, 3 discs left. This is my West Side Discs Sword. This started out as my bomber distance driver, and ever since it's beat in quite a bit, and since I started working on my backhand form, this disc is a lot less stable than it used to be for me. So I've been having a bit of trouble lately throwing this without turning it over. So I think going forward, this is going to be a disc that I'm really just throwing in tailwinds, where I need the disc to finish far and straight and behave a little more stably than it otherwise might. For my distance shots now, my max distance shots, I'm relying exclusively on the lots. It just covers even more distance than this. Even though this is a 12 speed and the lots is 9 speed, this just doesn't have the glide that the lots has. So move over sword. The lots is in that big distance slot, but this will still be my go-to disc for tailwind shots or big drives that I need to finish to the right. For max distance forehands, I am throwing a Crank. This is manufactured by Discraft in their ESP plastic. This is a 13 speed driver, so it has a pretty big rim, which is still comfortable for me in the forehand grip, but any bigger I think might start to get a little uncomfortable. And really low profile, so it feels awesome in the forehand grip. And I am throwing this forehand on a full S-flight of distances of maybe pushing 340, but more typically 320 to 330 feet. So awesome disc. Really liking this for bomber forehands. And the last disc in my bag is the Rask. This is manufactured by Castoplast. This is also in their K1 plastic. And this disc is a 14-speed driver, yet I'm only throwing this for maybe 280 feet tops because it just has no glide, falls out of the sky super quick, and is super, super overstable. I don't really throw this for any traditional shots. This is really just a utility disc for me when I need shots that skip like crazy. This skips like no disc I've ever seen before because it is in a pretty stiff premium plastic and is really low profile. So it skips really, really well. And the interesting thing about this disc is it has this inner rim. I don't know how well you can see that. but it adds a lot of overstability to this disc while still allowing it to be really thin. And it feels really cool in the forehand grip, to be honest, because my middle finger fits right in between the two rims, and it's really comfortable. So extremely, extremely unique disc. I picked this up at Marshall Street Disc Golf in Massachusetts. Such a cool disc to have. Nothing else on the market like it. And for crazy, crazy skip shots, this is the best disc I could ever ask to have. Kastaplast Rask. And that's it, everybody. I'm going to wrap this up because filming this video has just given me such a headache. So thank you for joining. If you're not super familiar with disc golf, I hope you learned something. I hope you have some level of enthusiasm about the game now. If you have been playing disc golf for quite a while, hopefully I've introduced you to some new molds that you might be interested in throwing. And that's where we'll wrap it up. So thanks again for joining. This is my In the Bag for 2020. See you next year.